So what is exception handling and what is exception handling in Java? That is the concept. We'll start with this question. What is an exception? What is an exception? So I was searching for this meaning and then I got this meaning. Anything that does not follow a rule is an exception. There's one more meaning to it. Anything that does not behave in an expected way. So this is an exception. Anything that doesn't follow an established rule or anything that does not behave in an expected way. So what kind of exceptions we face in our day-to-day lives? We'll discuss that with an example. So let's take an example here to understand exceptions. A real life example. Say we are in a classroom and I am the teacher teaching the class. And as a university, we have some standard rules for the classes. What are the rules you can think of? Faculty should be on time to the classes. Students should also be on time to the classes. Mobile phones are not allowed inside the classes. So these are rules set by the university, not by the faculty, right? So if these are the rules that we all should follow, but we always have a problem. We always have some exceptions to the rule. So no matter how many times I say don't use mobile phones, people will be sitting inside the class with a mobile phone. Or don't come late to the class. People will always have an exception. Even now I see such exceptions in the class. So how to handle these exceptions? How should I handle the exceptions that doesn't follow a rule? What I was normally doing earlier. So I should be like shouting at them or looking angry and doing things like that. So how I was handling exception is I was doing all these things, right? But what is our mainstream activity? Our mainstream activity is learning Java. I should be teaching Java, you should be learning Java. But because of these exceptions, what we are doing, I'm diverting from my mainstream activity. I'm talking something else. Don't use the mobile phone. Who are you? Why are you using this mobile phone? Or why are you coming late? Tell me the reason. So we are diverting from our mainstream objective. So how to, it creates a mess, right? For those students who are here, who wanted to listen, understand Java, or do something with Java, they get really distracted by all these unnecessary conversations we have. So how can we, solve this problem? Is there a way to solve this problem? So I was thinking about a way. Say university gives me a person or an assistant. This guy is like you can call him to be a thrower. And what this guy is going to do is he's going to come inside the classroom. He'll be just standing in front of the class, silently watching every single student. And he's not going to talk anything. And suppose he finds someone using the mobile phone, he will start creating a report. So he will write a report. And what report he writes is he will write the name of the issue. The name is mobile phone usage. So he says mobile phone usage is the issue. And then he should tell me which student is using the mobile phone. So he will tell me row and column number. He will not tell you, just create a report in silence. So he will say R2C5, student in this row and column is using the mobile phone. And then he will write the reason. Reason in the sense why he is writing this report. This student at this point in time was operating his mobile phone without listening to the class. So this name for this is say mobile usage 1. So this report he writes. He is standing here and looking at writing the report. Once when he finishes the report, he hands it over to his another authority. He is called the mobile phone catcher. So what this guy is going to do is he is going to get the report from the thrower and then he will take some necessary action. The action can be fining the student or counseling him to be a very good human being, following the rules. Let's not go against the rules, right? So such kind of counseling will maybe change him. So such things will happen. This can be for the faculty too, who is coming late to the classes. So thrower does this. What he does is he writes a report. Who is doing that? The problem is, and then he gives the reason behind it. And they are doing this without affecting the mainstream activity that is teaching Java, right? It's going to happen parallelly and they're not going to disturb me. Likewise, say somebody comes late, the thrower is again there, no? He finds that person who is coming late. Now what he will do is he will go and again write a report for that person. So what that report will contain? Name is late coming and he will give the registration number and or the row and column number where the student came late and you were seated, say R3C5, the student, and then reason. In this G2 slot, in this class, this student in this place came late by 5 minutes. So you will prepare this report, late coming report. And then say we have different people for different issues. There is an expert who will handle all the latecomers. So there's a professor there who is handling only the latecomers. So we will give this report to that professor. And yeah, I have kept that image like that because only then students listen to the words of the professor. So I go to an examination hall, I asked them to say, where are your ID cards? Nobody was wearing the ID card. Okay, I left that. And then after a professor came, was looking somewhat old and he was looking stern. He said, where are your ID cards? Everybody went in searching for their ID cards. So I thought, okay, we'll have that. So what this latecomer catcher does is he will only give counseling to students who are coming late or he will find these students. He will only deal with latecomers. So thrower creates a report for every different kinds of issue. What is there in the report? The name of the issue, where that issue occurred, and the reason or the message behind the issue. So what are the benefits of solving a problem like this? So now, what benefits I get? Preventing issues from overruling your mainstream activities. The mainstream activity is learning Java. Because of all these issues, I get affected, right? And then I start losing my mind. Maybe the issues get so intense, one day I'm going to run out of the class. Maybe that can happen. So that is like, it will halt your mainstream activity. That's a chance. The next thing is separating mainstream activities from issues. We are not, I'm not going to say don't use or don't, nothing like that. Only Java, your Java I'm going to speak. Someone else is going to deal with all these things. So you're separating that messy work we had earlier from the mainstream work. So I'm free from all these things. And any other advantages? Reusing the thrower and the catcher for multiple classes. Say in another class, in another room, they say there are people using mobile phones and coming late. So you can take this catcher and thrower, use it there in that class too. So these are some of the benefits of handling issues separately from the mainstream activity. In what way it is related to programs? Programs can also get exceptions. You write a program to run normally, right? To give us very good outputs, to get the best inputs, to work properly, to satisfy your customers. But programs also are bound to face such abnormal situations. What is an exception in a program? Any problem that can occur while the execution of a program. Abnormal situations your programs can face, the problem that occurs infrequently. So these are called exceptions in programs. Can you think of some exceptions for your programs? What abnormal situations can happen to your programs? Divide by zero is the famous thing. So let me give you one example. Say your program is there, it is going to receive a file, a text file from some other third party system. Say third party system is there and it's going to send us a text file and our program is going to read the file and process it. Every day it will process it, update the database. So say this third party system was down on one particular day, it didn't send us the file. So once when this file is not available, your program, what it will do is it will search for the file. Since it's not having the file, it will crash. There is an external factor determining whether your program will execute or not. So this abnormal situation can happen. Any other issues that you have faced earlier? That's a good thing. Any other situations you have faced? Say you're trying to access the database. Database is again a server. So you're going to give login and password and access the database. When your database server is down, you're going to again get an issue with your program. Your program will not work fine. You're trying to access a table in your database, it's not available, or you're not given the privilege to access the database, then you will get an error and your program will again crash. Any other issue? So what I'm trying to say here is another common issue is, say you need numbers to be the input to the program, but then the user enters string. So in that case, unexpected thing happens. The user enters string. So what will be the way the program handles it? It might crash because it can't process a string as an integer. So these are the exceptions that your programs can face. So what we are going to do is we are going to recreate all these exceptions, see what these exceptions are and how they affect our programs. We're going to understand that. So let's take an example. So what I want you to do here, what I want you to do is you can write a very simple piece of code to take in two numbers and add them and print the result. So let's go and try that piece of code here in Eclipse. So what we'll do is we'll have a very simple piece of code. This is out message. Enter two numbers from the user, and then what we are going to do is we are going to have a scanner. And then you will have an integer number one, that is input dot next in. We are getting an integer number. Int num2 is equal to input dot next in. And what we are going to do here is just print the addition of these two numbers. Very simple, right? So we'll print addition is num1 plus num2. After this addition is done, we can also print some contact info to the user. He is very happy using a software. So what we can do is we can print this contact info. Say, please contact support. And we can give some number here, 988, something like that. So it's just some contact information for my software. You always have contact, right? So now what we are going to do is we are going to execute this, check if it's working fine. So we'll execute this. Enter two numbers. So you enter 3 and 2. Addition is 5. The contact information is displayed. But the question here is, instead of an integer, this guy enters a string. What will happen to your program? Say, let's go and execute this again. Now an abnormal situation comes in. So what happens is, instead of entering a number, the second input is a string. Abnormal things can happen, right? So in this case, your program crashes. What do you mean by crashes? It's not going to execute any other line in your code when an error occurs like this. So it very clearly says there is a report given to us by Java Virtual Machine. What is the report? Input mismatch exception. Why this occurred? Because we expected an integer, but then we got input as a string. So that is one kind of exception, input mismatch. Now the question is, if I give a float value, will it accept and run? Instead of 2, I give 2.5. Will it run? Or will it throw an exception? So let's go and try that 2. 2 and, let me run this up. 2 and 2.5. Again an exception. So what is this exception? You have to understand this. What's happening here? We'll go step by step. Here it is trying to get in a number, but you are entering a string. So the exception arises in this line. So is it executing these two lines? Are you getting the contact displayed to the user? No. So wherever that issue occurs, the program halts there. It stops your program. Got it? So it will not, nothing will execute after an exception that comes up. So how will you handle this is the question. So before even handling that, we look at various other issues that may come with situations like this. So the next very simple exception that you will get is arithmetic exception, which we know, right? What is arithmetic exception? Let's go and have two numbers. Let me divide the two numbers. So let me have a command to divide and print the result of the two numbers. That is, division is, what is that? Num1 by num2. Okay. So what we'll do is now we'll run our programs. Let me check. Let us check what happens. Let's run for the right inputs here. So let's give 4 and 2. Addition is 6, division is 2. So it's working fine. But then if I divide a number by 0, what's going to happen? It's totally undefined. So you are going to have your program crashing if you divide a number by 0 here. That is integer numbers. So let me again run this one. Let me give 4 and 0. First number is 4. You are dividing 4 by 0. So what should happen? This will add the two numbers. 4 plus 0 is 4. This addition result will be printed. Whereas division, there will be an exception, a problem that is coming up. So what it's going to do is it's going to throw us, see here, the program stops when you are dividing a number by 0. So it tells us what is that issue. Arithmetic exception issue. It just gives us divide by 0 is the error. It tells us where it occurred. Say it's very much like the thrower creating a report, right? The report, what he gives, the name of the issue. Name of the issue is an arithmetic exception issue. Where that issue occurred, in which method it occurs, it is getting printed. And the reason, divide by 0. So who is giving us this report? Java virtual machine is giving us the report based on the input and the code that was executing. So this is another exception, arithmetic exception, which we have seen just now. Index out of bound exception. Have you faced this? What is index out of bound exception? Can you give me an example? So let us directly go and look at it here. Say if I have an array which can hold two integers. So this array can hold two integers. So what it means is it can have an index 0 and index 1. But what I'm trying to access is index 3, which is not even part of this definition. So normally what is the error you get while you are trying to access something that you are not defined? You get the array index out of bound exception as the error and where it occurred. Okay. So this can also happen with strings. If you want to access a character in a string that is in a different location other than the definition. Null pointer exception. How many of you have faced null pointer exception so far? Only one student. What about? As a Java programmer, you should have faced null pointer exception at least one point in time. Then only I can accept you as a Java programmer. Or else you are a super geek. Where all you face null pointer exception? Say you created this array of objects, right? And you create an array of references and then you don't allocate memory for your reference and you try to access the methods for your object, you're going to get an issue. So I'll show you a very simple example here. I'm having a string. Yes, I'm initializing that to null. And then I'm trying to use the method length for this object. Only when string has some value you can find the length, right? When it is null and you try to access the method on that particular reference, this is going to return what? Null pointer exception. So this, we can directly go and even create it here. Check whether that happens. So we can have a string s equal to null and then you try to invoke s dot length. There's no length for a null value, right? So immediately it will throw us an exception, null pointer exception. Any other place where you have faced a null pointer exception? While you create an array of objects, you will get a null pointer exception too. So it's like you say, for instance, shapes is the class. shapes, you create an array of shapes. And then without allocating memory for each reference in your array, if you directly try to do something like s dot calc area, you want to access some of the methods, this will return as null pointer exception. So what is the step that is remaining here? We have to allocate memory, right? S of 0 is equal to new shape. So we have to allocate memory for each object so that from S of 0 we'll have a reference pointing to that object location in the heap. So if you don't do that, you're going to get a null pointer exception. We've already seen that while you're working with array of objects. File not found exception. As I told you in the initial stage, if you don't have a file for your program to process, you will end up with a file not found exception. Let me create this file not found exception for you. Say I have this file test.txt. This is my text file. It's having files in Java might be tricky, but it is fun enough. So that is the text inside my file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the text and print it. So for that I have to create an object of type file, and then I should give the file name here, that is test.txt. And then we'll have a scanner object to scan the data in the file. So it is new scanner. Then so you're going to include this scanner input is equal to new scanner. You're going to give the file reader here. Then you'll have a string data is equal to input dot. We'll read it as a string from the file, and then we'll print the data to the user. Whatever that is in the file, we'll print that data out. Don't worry about this code. We'll also have a separate unit on files coming up. But this is just to tell you I'm reading the data in the file and displaying it to the user. So again, I'll be performing one more check here. So let's go and check whether our data is shown to the user. So you see data is getting printed from the file to the user. The file name is test.txt. But then the problem is if I give a file name test1.txt, this file is not available. So if I try to read from a file that is not available, what will happen? So the program will crash. What it's going to do is it's going to throw me an exception, file not found exception. So this is another issue that you might encounter. So normally, two systems from different domains communicate using files. Say mainframe can send a file to your Windows, and they'll have a fixed time. So once when the file arrives at 6 p.m., 6:05 p.m., your jobs on the Windows can run and update your databases. But suppose the mainframe system is not sending a file to your Windows by 6:05, your jobs on the Windows will still run, and then it will throw an exception like this. So once when an exception arises, the maintenance engineer will get a call, and then he should wake up, fix that issue, rerun his job, get the file, do such things. So exceptions are of so many different types. That's what we have to understand here, because we normally understand divide by 0 as an exception. What other exceptions you can have? Class not found exception. Have you ever faced this? See, that's what I told you. We have a separate session on reading files, writing to files. This is like if you don't have a file, what issues arise? What exception arises? Class not found exception. How many of you have faced this? So I will tell you the code, what this exception is. Say from your Eclipse, you can connect to your MySQL database. Let me draw that here. So you have your Eclipse, and from here you can connect to your MySQL database. So to connect to MySQL, you need a set of classes and methods. So you'll have some methods inside the classes, right? So you need that. And these classes are located in your mysql.jar file. So you have to configure your Eclipse to so that it can add this external jar. So your Eclipse should add this external jar. You should download mysql.jar, added to Eclipse so that all the available classes will be there so that you can connect to your MySQL database. So what one common issue I did was I didn't add MySQL.jar to my Eclipse. I tried writing code. I got some code from the internet. I want to connect to my database. So what it was trying to do is it was trying to access a particular method for a class, that is driver manager dot get connection. So the class definition for this was actually defined inside MySQL.jar. So when I was trying to run this code, it was trying to access that particular class definition. But then since the class definition was not added to Eclipse, it was not able to find the class. So it gave me class not found exception. So this is one famous exception that you will get while you're working with JDBC and Eclipse. So we will be learning how to connect to a database in our another 3 units from now. I believe that everyone will face this exception. So what is a class not found exception? It's looking in for the class definition, but that's not available. Maybe it's trying to access the method for a class or do something, but class definition is not available. It will throw you class not found exception. SQL exception. What is a SQL exception? Those who finish databases, you know, you have a separate database server to hold your data, right? So once there can be a lot of problems that can arise. Say, as a user, you are trying to access a table for which you are not given permission to access. Say, as a student, you are trying to access the faculty profile database. So this, when you try to write code, SQL query, you're going to run on the database, it will throw back a SQL exception issue. Or else you're trying to access a table not inside your database, an attribute not inside your table. So all these things will lead to SQL exceptions. If you worked on PHP, MySQL, you know, this is one common issue that you'll be again and again facing. Every time you run some query, SQL exception comes up. So one thing that you have to understand is all these are issues that can stop your program from running further. Once when you get that issue, will the next line in your code execute? No. It will stop, it will crash. That's it. You need manually, you have to come and intervene. Maybe you have to get the file ready, rerun the program, or do something like that. A program crashing is not a good thing. So when you're writing programs, you should also write programs that will handle exceptions. Got it? So in Java, they are grouping exceptions like this. You have this IO exception. An example for IO exception is file not found. File not found is an IO exception, input output exception. Class not found exception, I told you that MySQL.jar file not getting loaded and the class information missing. What is a SQL exception? You run a SQL query, the table is not there, attribute is not there. And you also have runtime exceptions. What do you mean by runtime exceptions? Anything that happens purely during when the program is running. So when you're talking about runtime exceptions, arithmetic exception is a runtime exception because while the program is running, user will give the input. The second number is 0, you get that exception. Input mismatch, again while the program is running, will happen. Null pointer, again when the program executes, is going to happen. Array index out of bound is also a runtime exception. So when you talk about runtime exceptions, these are some examples of runtime. But all these things come under exceptions. And there's one more thing, IO exception, class not found exception, SQL exception, all these things come under, they call that to be checked exceptions. They group it as checked exceptions. What do you mean by checked exceptions? The system will identify these exceptions during compilation. Whereas runtime exceptions are unchecked. What do you mean by unchecked? System, there is no way for the system to check it out. Only during the runtime is entering the data, right? So that kind of an exception will be runtime exception. And you call that all these things to be, what do you call them? Unchecked. Unchecked exceptions. So what I have shown you on the board is only examples of a few runtime exceptions and few other exceptions. You have maybe around 500 to 600 exceptions in Java. There are so many different exceptions in Java, and there is no need to go and really stress yourself to that extent. But at least are these exceptions clear? What is an exception? Any abnormal situation that can terminate your program. That's totally undesirable according to industry standards. How do you handle all these things in your program? Do we let the program crash or do we do something else?